And I think if we sort of touch that on actually the consumable content, right? Because that's where we're sort of going into, it doesn't mean it's a bad content, right? So it's the content that is built for speed and the volume rather than sort of the depth and longevity.
Our vision is to create product that is in a way consumable content, but is highly branded, but not at a low-level branded, just exchanging, but literally talking with the operator and understanding the customers that they've got and creating content for them that is very specialized in location,
Absolutely.
in language, in mechanics for that brand, where we want you to have content that is very specific for you, but also, and there's a consumable content side, is that we appreciate that it might not have a very, very long shelf life. Welcome to IGB Podcast, iGaming Checkup with Dr. Eyal, brought to you by IGB in partnership with Replay. I'm Dr. Eyal. I've been passionate about games and the people that makes them for many years. Humans have been playing games of chance even before we could write. So what is going on here? Why gambling games are so central to our experience as a species, and why something as simple as a slot machine is also the hardest game to make. Sure, there are plenty of iGaming podcasts out there covering industry trends and headlines, but this isn't just more of the same. We are here to challenge assumptions, invite sideways thinkers and industry outsiders, and explore the complexity of an ever-evolving, fascinating, and innovative space. If you are ready to think differently about iGaming, you are in the right place. Let's go. So I'm John with Elen Barber. We're going to have an interesting conversation touching many topics, among which consumable content. And I just want to say, we're going to be broadcasting this just before Christmas. So I'm all Christmassy, with my sweater. I hope that you can see the
Love
thing.
your
And
Christmas tree.
I'm going to be wrapping all kinds of gifts, of props that I've had, in the show so far. It's going to be pretty awesome. Ellen, I was so excited hearing that you're going to join us, and as you have such an interesting career. Like you've lived in so many places, in Moscow and London and Cambridge, and now in Surrey. So that's just a complete random question. Like if you imagine all in your career, you can have all the people in your career in a room. But who would you walk to, and what would you say?
That's a very good question. First of all, let's start with a thank you for having me here because I'm very excited. But to answer your question, I would probably say thank you. Thank you to all these people that gave me an opportunity, believed in me, trusted in me, challenged me, and made me who I am. Because I think it is important, especially when you start your career, you have people that give you the chance, that guide you through this. And once you have sort of the right attitude to work, right sort of ethics and things like that, then you progress. But anyone who made my life easier or more difficult, it made me who I am right now. So big thank you.
So I think that's a pretty good. That's a pretty good answer. You will just stand on one of those tables and go, "Thank you, everybody." Right?
Absolutely.
That's a good one. Yeah, maybe I should do that. Yeah. Next time when I have everyone in a room, I'm totally going to dance on the table and say thank you.
We can practice that.
So look, I think like chief marketing officer, right? Like, with if I look at like your journey in Kindred. And then later on with Super Group, if you look at the statement came from from Neil Menashe from in his New York Stock Exchange interview, he said something really interesting that really connected me to your role to play in your career. Like he said, our vision is like every single country is different, but our value is return on marketing. Now, in my career, seeing that the role of marketing on a B2C, often you miss that. I mean, outside of the industry, you don't understand how important it is to be the person leading that. That's the most cost. That's the most impact. So return on marketing. How does that meet you? A statement like that from you think about a B2C business, especially like Super Group and Kindred.
I think the role of marketing is very much underestimated, and it is usually an afterthought. And particularly in gambling, I think we are so used to high margins, big profits, that actually how we do it in effective, efficient way is not something that comes to mind, straight away. And it's usually about where we're going to get the money from, right? Let's think about the startup, right? How I'm going to fund my business, what's my platform, sort of technical side, and marketing is like, oh, we'll do our marketing plan later on. But actually, what drives the consumer, what drives the engagement, is how you engage with the customers on a daily basis, how you're able to understand the customer needs and don't just push this content out there across platforms, what you think is right. And I always love what Amazon used to do in their executive meetings. So they always used to leave the empty chair for the customer, because when we discuss our strategy, when we discuss our long-term plans, we do it without the customer. So there's always someone that is missing. And I think it's not about marketing should never be an afterthought. It should be carefully crafted with a good understanding and research on how you can differentiate your brand, your product to deliver something different. Because we want to stand out in this overcrowded place of, games, platforms, providers. Everything is exactly the same. So I would love people to think that whatever I'm responsible, what I'm driving, actually plays the crucial part. And I think the moment you start engaging with the rest of the executive team and explaining what actually marketing is, right, and what you can do, because it's an intersection of a lot of finance, right? You do a lot of analytics, and it's on section with technology, because it's all about the tools, the capabilities, that you have internally to be effective and engaging. And once I think your CEO, CFO, particularly because these are the guys that have to sign the check and make a sort of sign off on the strategy. Once they understand the importance of it and actually the complexity of it, I think you are in a much more interesting and thoughtful and fruitful discussion. I think sort of in general, there is a better understanding between you two, how you can take your business from where you're right now to where you want to be in, a few months, a few years down the line.
So, just to connect to this, like our CEO joined us very recently at Ruby Play. When he heard that I'm meeting you, he said, "Look, I would like you to ask her, what creative ways are there to acquire players in such saturated markets?" So, not I don't think like necessarily in this but do you have like cool examples like that, like something that's like a really cool example way to really compete in such saturated markets that you've been doing so well at being a part of?
You really need to understand every market is different, right? So you've got some foundations, but you really need to look at the sort of the cultural sort of aspects, and at different sort of stages of the market, different stages of our industry, because it changed all the time. There were various tactics, available. So, we all started, I think the whole industry started from the affiliate channel, and that was great, things that we used to do. At some point, I think platforms like Twitch opened up and when gambling streaming was still allowed there, there was a lot of interesting content being created there. Then I think it's how you sort of various sports sponsorship, right? Or sort of working with sort of celebrities or sports personalities. I think it's really where you work and what territory, what brand you promote, and what the message you're really trying to send to the customer. Because you should not take one strategy from one brand and just copy paste it to another one. Because it's not really going to deliver any results. It is like you should never copy paste. You should take as a framework and you should adapt it according to your needs, your strategy, and where the market and the consumers are at this stage. So I'm not answering your question, but per se, right? But I think throughout my life, we had so many sort of interesting sort of acquisition tactics. And it is really about finding what resonates with a customer, and it's also going to drive the growth.
I think that if you think about the Simon Sinek, the Simon Sinek model of the why, the how, and the what. You probably know this model. And for me, when I try to think of a why, say for a company, a company like Super Group or Kindred, when we think about the player, I think it's because players want to connect to experience deeply. When they're in a game, they want to connect to the game. They want to, so they'll place the bet because it makes the game so much more interesting. They're in the pub looking at the game. Even when you talk about prediction markets, it's a way to connect to reality deeply. When you care about something, you put the skin in the game. You're not the player on the field. But then, so this to me is a real meaningful kind of why. And then about the how, and then the what, where the what is something like return on marketing, really at the core. If the CEO of Neil saying that, then to me it's like that connection is that, and then the how connect to what you were saying about every country is different, every regulation is different, what you're allowed to do, not allowed to do. You're allowed to use streamers, you're allowed to use brand ambassadors, you're not allowed to advertise. So all of those things are very complex, but I think at the core of it, players want to connect to experience, and we're giving them tools to make that connection, to make this experience so much more meaningful. How do you think about that? What do you think about that?
I absolutely agree with you. I think it's about the connection that you create with the consumers. And I think the way how advertising has changed over the years, it's not your banners and landing pages anymore, right? It's more of a storytelling. So the brands that are able to create meaningful stories that not necessarily pushes the brand out there, right? There's no sort of logos, there are no bonuses, but through their influencers are able to create the story where customers can resonate and can feel that this person is enjoying that experience, and I can do exactly the same in a safe, obviously way. And I think this is critical because we want to make sure that we don't create an impression that you can win millions and have this sort of luxury lifestyle because if you're going to gamble. I think this is really critical for me. It's being able to portray that connection and have the entertainment and have that fun.
It's authentic. It's real.
Absolutely,
it's fun. People ask me about slot machines because that's say my bread and butter, making slot machines, and I said, well, I don't want to encourage players to spend more than they can, but if you go to a soccer game, you'll spend easy. We just went to a soccer game in Madrid recently together with the team. We spent 400 euros a ticket. 400 euros. The stadium was full of people spending 400 euros each for 2 hours entertainment. Slots are cheap compared to that. You can go and have so I'm saying it's not about the winning big, and it's about a meaningful experience, connecting to the moment in sports betting, connecting to the moment, when you're having fun with friends or playing an iGaming by yourself. It's really that connection. I think that's a point that's kind of sometimes is missed, especially by maybe people outside of the industry looking into the industry think it's almost like vilifying a little bit the work which we do, which I totally.
Our industry has issues, right? Let's not make it, let's not ignore it, right? I was actually having having a dinner the other day with a friend of mine, and he's looking to join a tobacco company, and his question was to me was, Ellen, but literally you work in gambling, how do you feel about it, right? And I say, all the time to people that people can create addiction to anything, right? You can be addicted to alcohol, obviously, tobacco. You can be addicted to chocolate. I love my chocolate, right? And it has its downside. I have to exercise twice harder to get out of the calories, right, that I consume, right? You can be addicted to shopping, right? And no one talks about it. There are areas, right? And there are sort of certain personalities.
Yes, shopping and chocolate. Under this tree, there are piles of chocolates that I've been shopping for.
Exactly, right? So perfect timing. So I'm just saying that, obviously, we as an industry is not without issues, but if we operate in a responsible way, we shouldn't portray, in the wrong way. But as any other industry, people can create addiction, and as long as they create that safe environment and create connections and be able to have trust between the customer and the operator, I think this is the key. Trust is the biggest driver of play, and it translates in various sort of sub messages. What is trust for you? You want to log into your account and you want to make sure that your funds are there. Right? That is pretty low level, right? But, this is critical. You want to make sure that, when you play a game and you win something, that you can withdraw the money straight away. And if you don't want to, right? And even that sort of little thought that you want to be able to have, you have to provide multiple documents and things like that. And that process is drawn out for, 20 days. My winning, take it out really quickly. You want to make sure that the operator understands your needs and all those payment methods are there. So we're still talking about the basics, right? Then we start talking about the quality of the content. What is the content out there, right? The games, right? That they are safe for you, right? There is a sort of the mechanics are transparent, or really clear. Your terms and conditions are clear. So once you trust the operator and give them the money, whatever is presented to you is also the good quality, safe and good quality, right? That operator is going to choose the best games, will provide you the variety of betting options, and will also give you the best odds. And then when it comes to sort of marketing, they're not going to sort of offer you something that you actually also present something market advertised that you're not going to get in real. It's like you buy, a shirt and, it looks really nice. And, on the pictures and when you receive it, there are sort of threads all out, right? And the buttons are falling off. This is exactly the same thing, right? Mm-hmm. So we want to make sure that what customers get what we're trying to sell. So everything is one package, and that's what forms customer trust.
I think that the incentive for us, that's a point I repeat many times in the podcast and in panels that the incentives are there. Like, we want players to play our games, to use our platforms, to use our services for life. We don't want someone coming and splashing out something they can afford and disappearing. We want them with us for life, having meaningful experience for life, having costs that they can afford on long term. Because from marketing spend perspective, for ROAS perspective, this is how you see, the real return on marketing. Because if you don't do that, the return on marketing will be very poor, and we'll not be able to actually have, a healthy long-term relationship with our players. So
yeah, absolutely. And I think if we sort of touch that on actually the consumable content, right? Because that's where we're sort of going into. It doesn't mean it's a bad content, right? So it's the content that is built for speed and the volume rather than sort of the depth and longevity. And like, for example, we go to Netflix, right? And we scroll and, we watch a couple of episodes and then, we don't find anything. We go back, right? We go to Amazon Prime and then we start scrolling, even longer and realize that, well, actually not much. And it feels like you have to work so hard, right, to find something that is good. So you go to sort of your favorite, sites, I don't know, by the way you like to shop, right? Or your social media platform, and you're bombarded with almost sort of identical products. This is the consumable product. They're just recycled, they're repackaged, they get, slightly different maybe colors, but it is exactly the same. This is a consumable content, right? And in gambling, I think we're actually heading down that way. There are certain companies that are now making an effort to almost go back to our roots, where there was significantly less operators, there was significantly less games. The technology was very much, different. So we physically weren't able to create so many games, so many betting propositions. We weren't able to sort of to spoil the customer with the variety. We had to spoil them with the quality. So I would love to see more operators and more sort of B2B providers actually looking at what is it out there that customers like about our game. And if they like the game, let's not just reskin it and create another 20 games like that. Think about Gonzo Quest. So games like Starburst or Gonzo Quest, they've been out there for years and years and years, and they're simple and so good mechanics, good graphics, and customers love it. So I'm sad to say, but I think this trend in consumability, if you can say it that way, doesn't actually drive the quality, and we really need to thrive and push for the quality, because this is when the customers actually start trusting us.
The thing is, you see, like what we believe at Ruby Play, and when I'm looking at the iGaming in general, but with reality of so much such saturation of different brands out there, that we think that the operators, the B2Cs, need to have a way to really distinguish themselves compared to other brands. And what we have as our vision is to create product that is in a way consumable content, but is highly branded, but not at a low level branded just as changing its product. Literally talking with the operator and understanding the customers that they've got and creating content for them that is very specialized in location,
Absolutely.
in language, in mechanics for that brand, where we want you to have content that is very specific for you, but also, and as a consumable content side, is that we appreciate that it might not have a very, very long shelf life. So for example, when you think about sports betting, when you've got like a lot of sensitivity for tournaments or specific events or different teams that might change depending on their performance, as a bookkeeper, you need to have content that is very dynamic and related to this, and then now you have a different problem to solve than just creating, say, like a star, like you mentioned, Starburst, like a game that everyone have that stays there kind of forever. Now you have a different problem to solve, that customers see your players see your content, they interact with it, but now the content at some point might become a bit less relevant because they've interacted with us, and then the problem shifts from the kind of problems that we used to have to solve in the past as operators and content suppliers to more the problem that now is companies like Netflix and companies that manufacture casual games have to solve, which is a consumable content where players consume it, and they need to continue producing content for those players. Now, it's a very tough problem to solve because you need to continuously reinvent yourself, but at the same time you want to create that comfort for players in the product that you make, like that the trust that you were talking about. So I think that it's really interesting. I believe that the industry, as more brands would want to distinguish themselves and be able to market themselves as unique, I believe there'll be more need for this in the industry. So do you see this kind of thing coming and
I would love to see it coming. I think it's a trend, but I actually want to answer your question with a question. Do you know how Netflix started?
Oh, absolutely. So Netflix started by, I was supposed to say, I have no idea. And you can answer that. The Netflix model was to actually create a service where the revenue doesn't come from late fees, but by, yeah, bingo, I got it. I'm a passing test. No, so yeah, because at the time you have blockbusters making most of the revenue from late fees. And Netflix comes along and say, hey, let's just give, I was about to say players, but no, the viewers what they want, so they get the content they want to the house with no late fees, and when they're done, they send it back. It sounded like the dumbest idea ever. When Blockbuster heard about it, I said, you guys are going to go under because, you're not going to make any money. A few years later, Blockbuster was busted. So I think that, yeah, it's creating that new model and understanding the need is what can really reshape an industry in a way that would, completely changes everything.
You're absolutely right. But I think what's critical is that they both had lots of content. And most of their sort of profits been made from the new releases. The moment the new game is out there, the moment the new movie is out there, everyone wants to see it. You have a boom for, I don't know, a few weeks and a month, and that's it, it's dead. So, but then you're sitting on the pile of hundreds and thousands of contents, sort of games or videos that have been created in the past, and you've paid for it. So how you're going to push this content out there to the customers? And the key here is personalization. Netflix has invested billions into creating that. So the whole business model is based on personalization. Yes, you're going to, customers are always going to come for the new releases, but actually they've turned it around, and most of their money most of the profits have been created on pushing the content that's relevant for the customer on the old games, because the new films, they're more expensive. The old ones, significantly cheaper. So how are we going to balance it out? And I think this is exactly the same what we have. We shouldn't rush and say, well, we don't want to have a business model as a sort of B2B or games provider that we want to create 1,000, maybe not 1,000, right? But let's say 300, 400 games a year. Are we really able to make them a good quality, make sure that they're sort of properly tested and they really address customer needs, our client needs in terms of the operators? What if we just say that we're going to scale it down significantly and really work with operators to understand what works for them? What are the games that in the history, right, has made, and it's data, right? We're a digital business, all the data is out there. So, and rather than think, well, it was a Starburst, right? It was a Gonzo Quest. It was, it was an Aviator. Well, it is an Aviator right now. And rather than creating 20 different Aviators, let's look at the underlying idea why customers like it. They like graphics, they like, mechanics, they like, play routes, sort of bonus rounds. They like the sense of control, right? So how can we give them exactly what customer needs, and create new games or repurpose the old games that are out there that are not visible to the customers? You don't want to create a game and invest so much sort of time and effort only to find out that in 3 months it will be on the page 20 of your lobby. That's not the aim. You want that game to be on the top page and constantly being pushed to the customer because customers love it.
The thing is, though, the other side of this, is that if you end up with mega games like the ones you've mentioned, in a way it turns the actual brands into a commodity. There's a risk there. So we at RubyPlay actually think we want to preserve mechanics that we see really work, but we want to be cautious that it's not about us, RubyPlay. Hey, we are RubyPlay, here's the game, or about, specific games we've got, like, like the Mad Hit series or the Vortex series. And because then it becomes about us. And then the brand is a commodity. And we want to come with a different proposition. We would still retain that mechanic. We don't want to flood, you with stuff, but then we want to work with you to find out on those mechanics, how we make you the B2C, you the brand, not a commodity. How we can help you distinguish your brand from other brands. And in a way, it sounds like a dumb idea because hey, it's way better for us. Just like the Netflix thing, it's way better for us to actually have a game, a mega game that's everyone. Then we can actually dictate terms that we want, because I know like some of those companies that you mentioned actually have dictated very aggressive terms on the so. But no, we think no. If we can be the partner of choice, such we can power your brand on your terms, that's what would give us the ability to disrupt the industry and really take your brand for you. And if so, but
historically, there've been, we're talking about the games, right? Historically, there's been also operators, right, that been sort of really harsh and sort of dictating the terms. And I don't think it ever ends well, because there's going to be a new player, there's going to be a newcomer that is going to say, well, everyone is really not happy, right, with the business conditions. So how are we going to give the operators and the customers something that is going to fulfill that niche? How are we going to become a good, trusted, in this case, business partner? So I'm absolutely with you. And I think when you look at, in general, if we just talk about the casino, how do casinos really differentiate? How? It's exactly, especially nowadays, right? It's so easy to launch a new brand. It's really plug and play, right? There are companies that will stake you, right?
I get approached on LinkedIn twice a day. If I just wanted to open a casino, here are the keys.
Like literally, right? So there's just so much temptation to do it, and it's out there. So what are you going to do in this case? You won't be that selective. You're going to just flood your lobbies with hundreds of games. And it is quite a big temptation, I think, for the game providers to be also selective where they want their games to appear. Creating that maybe a sense of luxury, sense of quality, because you don't want to be associated, with other studios or in general creators that don't play this game well. So it's a business ethic question, exactly what you're touching upon. So at the end, we end up exactly the same sort of games, really similar designs. If we're using, if it's not standalone, if it's not your in-house developed platforms, then you start differentiating on the both bonus mechanics. But then the bonuses are getting more and more prohibited. So what are you left with? Absolutely nothing. So we need to go back to basics. Go back to what we need. How do we serve the customer? How are we going to be selective? Right? It's not about the quantity, right? It's really about the quality. And I think that drives play, that drives trust, that drives consumption of your good quality content.
And just being aware of time. So like you've recently completed a course focusing on AI and how it impacted. So you've done this in Harvard, I think. Like that was the Harvard or the MIT one? I can't remember.
No, that was Harvard. Yeah,
Harvard. Yeah. So if you think about like the AI exploded, generative AI exploded, and how to actually bring it. So how do you see something like generative AI in a regulatory environment with all the restraints that you just mentioned? How do you think the future looks like in that context?
I think we're going back to what we just discussed. I think the way how AI is being used right now in comes to the content generation is just to create volume. But it is really just scratching the surface of it. The capabilities of the technology are so much more deeper, and that will it allows you to do analysis of mechanics of customer behavior that will help you to understand why certain games are, stickier than the other, what drives it, something that is currently not visible to the human eye, because it's just simply able to absorb and consume so much more data. So I think that's when we should be really focusing. Yes, AI will help you. Gen AI will help you to, create your content much quicker, a better quality, Sometimes you still need to control it and have a proper quality assurance. But I think it's really, we are not even scratching the surface of it. We are using the basics. And it is scary, right? Because people always think about, well, is it going to replace my job, right? And people say, well, if you're not using AI, that's what's going to really replace your job. So how can you learn to understand what are the capabilities, and then take it to a different level? How can you create an engagement with the customer? I'm just sort of thinking out loud, right? When the customer goes on site and, potentially you can have a conversation like, what kind of session do you want today? Do you want it relaxed? Right? Do you want a medium? Do you want it really exciting? Or do you want something, do you want something new, right? In terms of the content being pushed to you, or there's something that you've kind of played in the past, what themes you enjoy, right? So something, I don't know, classics or traditional games, fantasy or branded, or you're a sports fan.
You can literally reproduce what Netflix did on a shoestring budget through actually using AI tools and your players and analyzing it on an order of magnitude cheaper, because the tools are there.
Absolutely.
And in terms of production, sorry,
have you seen, I think it's a Black Mirror? A couple of years ago, they produced one of the episodes where you as a viewer were able to interact with the content. Right? So it is the interaction that are important, right? So you don't just want to consume it, right? And you want to engage the customer more and more and more. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was saying that, so there's the side of interacting with players on content that is existing, and maybe even modifying it slightly within the regulatory boundaries. But on the side of production, we believe from a production perspective that AI makes the mediocre a lot more mediocre, but the exceptional a lot more exceptional. So it creates a reality where the in the middle is nothing. But because everyone can make mediocre content with AI just by a few prompts, but then the real talent that is very good in creating high quality content can use AI to empower them to really do exceptional things at a larger speed. So to really put the quality where you couldn't even imagine even a year ago. So this is why I see AI not as just a way to replace, but to really give talented studios, talented professionals a huge edge over what they would have had before, to really show what they're capable of doing. So that's how we view AI.
Yeah. And just to give you, an example of what we did on the course, one of the exercises that we had to do, we had to create our snack company. In an hour and a half, we were given a task to work with ChatGPT with a certain set of prompts, and then you make decisions based on that. Within an hour and a half, you are able to create your business plan, right? Your name, ingredients, all the way sort of packaging, all the way down to where it's going to be produced, right? What factories, how they differentiate themselves, right? And what's going to be the price of production. So what you can do nowadays, right? You can take that massive process that in the past would take you months, right? And weeks and months.
Millions of dollars, yes.
Exactly, into an hour and a half. Is it going to give you a good product? Not necessarily, because I think what sometimes it is missing the creativity. It's missing that human touch, because at the end, we ended up with a quite similar product. Right? They were a little bit different, but you as a customer, as a consumer, are you able to really differentiate that, that chocolate cookie has a little bit more ginger in it and no sort of less ginger, right? Or bigger chocolate chunks or something else, right? And most of it went for some healthy snacks with protein bars and things like that. So
intuition,
yes, exactly,
experience, right? Connections. The AI doesn't give you that, not yet.
So
not
yet. Yeah, we're not there yet. Yes, but it is going to come. So, but I think we really need to take that those capabilities, and then think how we embed it deep into operation. And when it comes to, I think, the safety of the customers, this is where we really need to to focus on, because this is, I think, where a lot of companies fail to protect our customers. Sometimes not deliberately, it's just because there are so many data points that you're not able to consume and absorb, right, in a timely manner. And I think our sort of regulations and again systems, they are not perfect. So AI actually gives us the capability to analyze the sort of data and find the triggers that can be sort of harmful for the customers that normally wouldn't be seen in medicine, right? We know that algorithm can spot small sort of signs of cancer that a human can't. So let's bring it to our industry.
It's great to see you are very passionate about the future and AI and this.
I love it, right? But it is about creating, also working with AI in a very safe manner. And I think a lot of companies choose not to do it because, first of all, they find it too scary. So it's when it's too scary, it's easier not to touch it, right? And let's just put it in a big drawer, right? And a dark drawer. So, and it's not going to touch us. It is coming our way, right? But how do you create, a safe boundaries for your employees to make sure that the sensitive data is not shared, right? That they have the sort of the protocols, they have processes, frameworks to utilize those technologies for the benefit of the business. And I think this is exactly what it should be doing, because at the moment, I think most of the companies use ChatGPT or Claude to do their performance reviews. That's it, right? Unless you're sort of designer, right, and you've got some sort of.
I promise you, my team who was watching this video, I am not using ChatGPT to do your performance review. That's due. By the time you see this video, you would have seen them. I'm doing them all by hand. I promise.
Well done. Well done.
Okay, look, Elen, it was a great pleasure having you here with me for this podcast, and I think it was a super interesting conversation. I wish you the best of time for Christmas and the holiday season, and I hope to catch up in the next maybe nice. Maybe we can
absolutely, and good luck. Thank you again for having me here, and good luck with your present wrapping.
Where's the skeleton? It's all gone. All right. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of IGB Podcast, iGaming Checkup with Dr. Eyal. There's plenty more to come. So stay with us for more eye-opening, thought-provoking, and stigma-challenging conversations that dig deeper into the world of iGaming.